Hi there, this is the next stage of the rolling out. I've got the same piece of clay as I had before, and I've rolled it lengthways slightly and more widthways. And I just want to check it's sort of the size I want, so I've got an old piece of string and I lie this, so I'm holding the top piece in line with the top of the head, dropping it into the back of the head and running it down, which when I stretch out is that long, so that should be long enough. If I go down from one side of the head across to the other, so it's like that, okay. I always find that is usually a lot bigger than you think it's going to be. And in fact, actually, it's just a bit narrow there because that's going to be about the same width down there. So it's just a bit too narrow, so I'm just going to... Quite a bit of this is going to get cut off because it's going to be cut more to more of a circular shape at the top. So I'm just going to remove those anyway to make it easier. And this bit I'll probably make some mistakes because it's always a bit awkward to do this. But I find with clay, as long as you're pretty patient with yourself, can be quite forgiving. Right, so I want to get this down into there, and I want to go from this end, obviously, line that up, down through there. To get it into the area at the centre, I'm going to squeeze it together to pinch it to go down into the neck, and then I want to get it down into the back of the head. Without it ripping. And this area, this excess clay here, where it's folding, sort of getting in the way of that. So I'm just going to cut through to release that a bit. Okay. I need to get the clay. Put that one underneath. I want to get the clay that's underneath pressed against the sides and the back. I've got this excess here. Cut that. It's always a good idea to cut off slightly less than you think you're going to need to, because when you're pushing this a bit further, having cut off the excess, it tends to sort of move into the air and it takes more clay than you think it will need. This is one of the reasons why you need to reinforce the plaster bandage, because if you hadn't, at this stage it would just collapse under the weight of the clay. Now I'm going to get rid of the outside just a little bit so that I can see more clearly what I'm doing. And I want to have a slight overlap here because I'm going to squish that into there. And if you notice, I'm supporting, when I'm pressing really hard on the inside now, I'm supporting it on the outside because I don't want to distort the head. So I need my hand to take the pressure from this. And I'm stroking it, just stroking it in with my fingers. It doesn't matter if the interior of the sculpture has got slight grooves on it at this stage. I'm going to smooth it out quite a lot before I join it together, because some of my pieces I pierce and put cut holes into them so you can see in from the outside. And I tend to keep the ceramic pieces I make, the original pieces, and I want to know that if I look into them, they're not going to be a real mess on the inside. It's important to me. Now I've got some, oh no, it's just clay. If I get plaster, sometimes I find as I'm doing this, I've got plaster on my hands from the mould, or plaster sort of flicked up and got in. If you find you've got plaster in the clay, you must get rid of it. You can just pick it out with your fingernails or a knife or something, but just get rid of it because you really don't want it in the clay. And when I take this out of the mould, it will be speckled with loads of plaster from the plaster bandage. And it will actually take quite a long time to pick it all out. But it's worth it. See, like this has got plaster in there. And because I don't want this to affect future sculpture work, I just scrape it off the surface. And I'll just stick that little bit of clay in my compost. Okay, I think that's more or less it for now. I'm just going to smooth down the inside of that a wee bit more before I leave it, and I'll do the other side. I do putting the clay into Michael's face next, but I won't bother recording that because it really is just a repeat of this. The only difference is when I make the face, before I start, I'll put a lump of clay into the nose area, because when you push the clay down into the surface and you're trying to push it right down into the moulded area of the nose, there's a tendency for the clay to crack because it's just stretched a bit too far. but that's really the only difference between that and this. Okay, and then I need hot water. And that can be firming up while I'm making the other half, and then when the other half's firm, I'll join the two together. And in the meantime, I'll go through all the clay that I've cut off. Just check that I've got rid of the plaster from it. And I'll also clean up my work area to get rid of the plaster from working with this mould on here, so that when I do the next one, once again I'm working with clay that, working with a space that's as plaster free as possible, and I try and keep my, hey, it's really quite important to try and keep on top of this contamination because it can affect your work, and I know that it's sort of too distressing if you have pieces that are damaged because they've had plaster on them. Okay, bye bye.